Hey there, friends. Yesterday, a very well-known Democrat and a very well-known anti-gun person put out a video of her training with an AR-15 and a sidearm at some kind of a competition. It was definitely a sanctioned event, looked like a three-gun event. Speaking about Tulsi Gabbard, she put out a Twitter post that said, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, dusting off the cobwebs and gaining new skills thanks to the tactical games for an incredible day of training." Then she had this really cool montage video that she put together and put out there. Now, my question is why? Gabbard is on the record with some pretty staunch anti-constitutional, anti-Second Amendment views. If you'll remember, Gabbard ran for president in 2020 on the Democrat ticket. She is still a Democrat, by the way. She has never been a proponent of the Second Amendment. In fact, she is former military, Army, I believe. And for some stupid reason, that gives people some kind of credibility to be able to talk within that Second Amendment community as if they're more experts than people who aren't former military. So it's a little dangerous that she's even spoken on firearms in the past. However, she seems to clearly be trying to shift. She has made somewhat of a shift over the last few years. If you'll also remember that whenever she got pushed out as not being any kind of favorable contender in the presidential election for the Democrats, they very much turned on her. The Democrats really turned on her, pounced on her. Hillary Clinton called her a Russian agent or something along that lines, as if she was working for Russia against the Democrats. They've really gone against her. I wonder if she hasn't now realized that she was part of the problem being with that group. Now, you know my feelings. Before anybody wants to comment below, feel free to comment. But you know my feelings on Democrats and Republicans. I'm just stating the obvious here. Does this signify some kind of a turn to the right for her? Obviously, she's already moved more towards the center with her views and been very outspoken about it. Is she moving even farther to the right? But more importantly, are we gaining an ally for the Second Amendment? Now, before anybody jumps on that, yeah, I'm very suspect when you have a person with a past like this. In 2018, she said, "We don't have to wait to pass legislation already supported by a majority of Americans like universal background checks, closing the gun show loophole, and reinstating a federal ban on military-style assault weapons." This comment right here just 4 years ago shows a high level of ignorance, because if you'll look, for one, the vast majority of Americans don't support what she's talking about, universal gun show, loophole, whatever, the whole gamut of words that they like to use. The reason why is because they misuse that term, background checks, whenever they ask their polling question. In other words, they say, "Do you believe in background checks?" And most people are going to say yes. Because why? Because we know that we already have background checks. But then they twist that and use that in terms to make their support for universal background checks. Universal background checks. What they mean is not allowing private purchases. Well, if you look at her second part of that statement, she's talking about the same thing. Universal background checks and closing the gun show loophole. That is literally the exact same thing. Those two things, when they're talked about, mean the same thing. They mean no private gun sales. So she's repeating herself in the same sentence, just using two different terms that the left likes to use to make private sales look and sound bad and really evil. But the one weapon that she seems to be carrying around right here, maybe this is rules for thee and not for me, is of course the quote ban on military-style assault weapons like she's using in this video. Does she mean that it's okay for her to use it because she's somebody important and we shouldn't have it? Or has she changed her position on that? I'd like to also go back to a previous statement she made where she was asked to please explain the policies, if any, you support to address gun violence in America, where she said, "I have long called for reinstating a federal ban on military-style assault weapons and high-capacity magazines." Again, both of which she's using in this video. Requiring comprehensive pre-purchase background checks, that's eliminating the ability to have a private gun sale. And preventing domestic abusers from acquiring a gun, that's that, quote, boyfriend loophole that they just closed with the anti-gun bill. Closing the gun show loophole, that's exactly what she already said, with pre-purchase background checks for every gun sale, again, showing a certain level of ignorance right there. and making sure that terrorists are not allowed to buy guns. That is the no-fly list that you heard about before. I've put several videos out on this. Essentially what that means is they're trying to make it sound like, ooh, you know, everybody should be okay with not allowing terrorists who can't fly to not be able to purchase a gun. The problem with that is, yeah, it sounds great, right? Sounds really good. There's no rule to putting somebody on this terrorist no-fly list. There's no rule. They just do it, arbitrarily do it. And you're not notified when you do it, so you can't pre-prepare in order to fly to get that taken off of there. So they just arbitrarily throw people on this list, and it takes more than an act of Congress to even get off of that, because Senator Ted Kennedy was on this list at one time before because he had a name similar to somebody else who was on that no-fly list, and it prevented him from getting on that list. So very, very dangerous thing right there. It's not an accurate thing. You can be thrown on there for similar names. Just like getting delayed for a 4473 background check where you have similarities to somebody else who might be a felon, who might have a certain ticket outstanding or whatever. You also could be delayed as a result of that. And the same applies on this no-fly list. So she supported that back then also, knowing full well, hopefully she understood that this was a nefarious thing and just anybody could be thrown on that, and it's not right to not allow people to purchase firearms because so many mistakes are in that very list, and those mistakes are very known and very common to everybody out there. And one final knock against her from the constitutional standpoint, she actually voted against constitutional carry, was not a fan of that. So many things against her. However, people challenged her on this Twitter post, and it's interesting the comments that she made or the responses that she made. You'll notice on some of these comments, people specifically asked her about her past views on firearms and the Constitution. You'll notice right here that it says, your past views on firearms has not been favorable, and now here you are doing what we all like to do and have trained for. Has your position changed? Look at her comment below. It says, thank you, and it's got the little praying or thank you hands. It has. More on this soon. So she's saying that her position has changed. Right below that, serious question. Does this mean you've changed your stance on 2A restrictions you voiced previous? Gabbard responds, yes, more to follow on this. So I know some of you might be thinking, why am I not celebrating this? We finally got somebody who came over to our side. Let me explain a little bit of why, okay? Because this will probably be used against her if she is making a full-blown move, not only to the right, but in support of the Second Amendment. Her previous positions were not just opinions. Her previous positions weren't just different. Her previous positions were unconstitutional. This isn't a matter of, I have a different opinion than her. This is a matter of, I was right all along, and she was wrong all along. That's not an opinion. The things she stated were unconstitutional. The things I support are pro-Constitution. So it's not just an opinion issue that we have here, and it's not something that I should be celebrating because she had a change of opinion. Something either happened financially, where she now sees the need to suddenly be pro-Constitution, but she had all those original thoughts before that were anti-Constitution, or something. Something has changed in her life somewhere along the line. Wouldn't surprise me if somehow or another she felt the need to actually use a firearm and recognize the value in the average old person, just like me, little old plain me, to actually have the right to have a firearm, learn how to use it, and be able to protect my family. It's very possible that she had an epiphany. Something, a big moment in her life changed the way she was anti-Constitution before and made her realize that this was actually a good thing, that people had the right to support the Second Amendment and actually exercise their fundamental constitutional rights. What I will also do in terms of Gabbard going forward is I will proceed with caution. Politicians have long used us who support the Second Amendment. They've always used gun supporters and gun people. Politicians have long used us. I feel like now it's time to use them. Use Gabbard. Use the pictures of her. This is not something she's going back on. She can't go back from this. From some of the things that she said in the past to what she's saying now that she's changed her views, now that there's all this footage and all this this B-roll of her running around shooting a assault weapon with a high-capacity magazine. She can't get away from that. So her political career on the far left is over. She can never go back to that. I am cautiously optimistic about this. I don't trust any politician, and I certainly don't trust a politician who has shown their true colors in the past. However, something's going on with Tulsi Gabbard doing all of this, and I'm waiting to see what it is. It's definitely something pro-gun. Clearly, somebody has gotten to her, and she is doing something to further move on into that Second Amendment community going forward. You can book that.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. It's over.